Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. We have some breaking news, and it's super unfortunate breaking news regarding UFC 290, and that is that Sean Brady is out of his fight against Della Maddalena. It has been confirmed Sean Brady has withdrew from the fight. We don't know the exact reason now. I'm assuming it's going to be undisclosed injuries, but this is a massive hit to the card. And I think I have a good idea for a replacement opponent for Della Maddalena. One that's kind of realistic. Another one that I think makes perfect sense, but it's super unrealistic and probably not going to happen, at least not at UFC 290. So that's unfortunate, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this is a massive blow to the card. This is a fight that I was really looking forward to. This was on the prelims, and I know, okay, a prelim got canceled. On the surface, it doesn't sound that bad. This was one of the best fights on the card. Outside of the top two title fights, this was probably the fight that I was most looking forward to on the card because Della Maddalena has looked like an absolute savage. Of his 14 wins, he's finished 13 of those. He's only been to decision once. And he was getting a massive step up in competition against Sean Brady, a massive jump up in the rankings because Sean Brady's ranked number 8, coming off a loss to Della Maddalena, who's in line for a title shot right now. Della Maddalena just entered the rankings after defeating Randy Brown. This was perfect matchmaking by the UFC. This was a dream matchup in terms of a Della Maddalena progression. And we were going to learn about how is Della Maddalena's, grappling? How is he defensively in his grappling against an elite grappler like Sean Brady. And I was really looking forward to that. And also I was curious, Sean Brady, I made this comparison the other day. Sean Brady of last year was kind of like Della Maddalena, not in their fighting style, but Sean Brady had a lot of hype behind him. He was a surging contender. He gets a big jump up in competition against Belal Muhammad, gets stopped at UFC 280, and now he has to fight a guy behind him in the rankings in Della Maddalena who's surging himself. And it was just such a compelling matchup. I thought it had no business being on the prelims. I thought it clearly should have been on the main card over something like Bo Nickel, Tresean Gore. And now I'm just absolutely devastated. I mean, this is horrible news. UFC 290 is still very good, but this is devastating news to lose this type of fight. It was an amazing contender fight. Della Maddalena, with a win over Sean Brady, was going to propel into the top 10 of the welterweight division. And then his next fight, I mean, we're looking at like Gilbert Burns. We're looking at maybe Belal Muhammad. We're looking at some of those top-ranked guys. And Della Maddalena, imagine a future fight, Della Maddalena versus Shavkat Rakhmonov as a number 1 contender fight. That's what we were looking at in the possibilities of 2024. And now it's all up in the air. We don't know if he's going to get a replacement opponent. The fight card is a week away, so it's unlikely that he's going to get a replacement opponent, but you never know with the UFC. And even if he does get a replacement opponent, I'm going to speculate on who that could potentially be in a minute. Even if he does, I mean, is there really an opponent that would replace the amount of excitement that we have for Della Maddalena versus Sean Brady? I'm not saying Sean Brady's some like crazy exciting fighter, but I'm just saying that matchup made all the sense in the world because Sean Brady, great grappler, really good at taking guys down and controlling them on the ground. Della Maddalena just marches forward, looking to finish the guys via KO, TKO. And they both had full training camps for the fight. And now the fight's just off. And honestly, the first news I saw of this was Joaquin Buckley posted a video where he was talking to Della Maddalena at the Apex or something. Maybe this was at the grappling thing they had going on. I don't know if that was at the Apex or not. But he talked about it, and he talked to Della Maddalena, and he said, look, the UFC asked me to fight you, but let's do it in September or August or something. I don't remember exactly what he said. I will repost the Joaquin Buckley video. If you want to go check that out, go look at my Twitter, at MMAJoeyC. But Buckley seemed like he didn't want to step in. He said, you know what, let's do it down the line. And I like Della Maddalena versus Joaquin Buckley, but that doesn't even hold a candle. And even so, Joaquin Buckley does not seem interested in stepping in on a week's notice. And for me, no matter who you find to step in on a week's notice, it's never as good because there's just an asterisk next to it. You know what I mean? Even if you get the best possible opponent to step in, there's an asterisk next to it because now Della Maddalena, he's a surging contender. If he loses, well, he fought a guy on short notice, a totally different style matchup. If he beats him, oh, well, he fought that guy. That guy was coming off the couch. I always just historically hate short notice fights. So this is just a massive hit to the card. I'm super disappointed. And also, even on terms of short notice replacements, it's slim pickings. I really don't know who the UFC can find. And are Do we really want to see them just sign some dude from who's under Iridium management and just sign him to fight Jack Della Maddalena and just get slaughtered by Jack Della Maddalena? I certainly don't want to see that. That doesn't interest me. My ideal scenario, and it sucks because I'm really looking forward to UFC 290. My ideal scenario is that the UFC just finds a better fight, whether it be Sean Brady, depending on how long Sean Brady's going to be out, and just books Jack Della Maddalena down the line. I don't know how long Sean Brady will be out for. If he's not going to be out that long, just rebook the fight. UFC 293 in Australia makes perfect sense. If not, find another opponent for UFC 293. Give him full training camps. It's going to be unfortunate that Jack Della Maddalena is not on UFC 290, but it's better than, finding some short notice guy, that's coming off the couch that maybe isn't even in the UFC. Like, I don't want to see him fight somebody making their UFC debut. And then imagine he loses. His career's over that quick before it even started, basically. I know that's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's just how I feel about short notice fights in general. And then if he just beats some guy making his UFC debut, it means absolutely nothing. So it's just a means of getting him a paycheck, which I'm fine with for him. But as a fan, talking from a fan's perspective, that's not necessarily what I want to see. But as far as short notice replacements, I'm looking at the division right now. The division's pretty much booked up. Jeff Neal has a fight coming up with Ian Gary. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson has a fight with Ian Machado Gary. So those are out of the question. Sean Brady's injured. Vicente Luque has a fight coming up with RDA. Neil Magny is an opponent that is possible. Neil Magny just fought Philip Rowe last week. Neil Magny and his hairline is the type of guy to make a quick turnaround for a good paycheck and fight Jack Della Maddalena. Now, that's not an ideal scenario. That's not a fight that I love. But that would be a mild test for Jack Della Maddalena and test his grappling a little bit. But Neil Magny's on the regression. He's going downhill. I don't love that fight. I'm not dying to see that. I don't think it really adds anything to UFC 290. But that probably makes the most sense. Michael Chiesa has a fight coming up. Everyone else is booked. Everyone else in the division is booked when you start looking at from 6 out. Because Shavkat has a fight coming up, just got booked against Kelvin Gastelum, and he's not going to fight on short notice. He's not going to fight all the way up to the top 5, basically. Gilbert Burns is out. Hamzat Chimaev, I mean, we're getting super unrealistic here. Hamzat Chimaev is going to step in on short notice. He can't even make weight. And he's been sitting out, hanging out with a Chechen warlord. So that's not happening. Bilal Muhammad's sitting there at number 3, and I know Bilal Muhammad just fought at UFC 288 on short notice against Gilbert Burns. Bilal Muhammad already deserved a title shot before he beat the brakes off of Gilbert Burns. I wouldn't hate it if they paid Bilal Muhammad a massive paycheck to take on Jack Della Maddalena, but on short notice, again, I don't want to see it on short notice. If we're going to book Bilal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena, I'd rather see it when they both have a full training camp. Book it for UFC 293. Another fight, again, completely unrealistic, but we're just looking at the rankings here. Colby Covington's sitting at number 2 in the rankings. And I know that sounds egregious because Jack Della Maddalena is number 14 in the rankings. Colby Covington's number 2. And Colby Covington's also been promised a title shot by Dana White, but so has Bilal Muhammad after the win over Gilbert Burns. But the more I think about it, that makes a lot of sense because Colby Covington, say what you will about his resume, which we're going to talk about his resume just for a quick second in a minute. But Colby Covington would be a great test for Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, to fight the number 2 guy ranked in the world, a guy who's fought for the title before, a guy who has elite level grappling and wrestling and cardio, that'd be a great test for Jack Della Maddalena. And you know a thing that Jack Della Maddalena and Colby Covington both have in common? Neither one of them has a win over a current ranked top 15 welterweight. So if Colby Covington gets a win there, he has a win over a current top 15 ranked welterweight. If Jack Della Maddalena gets a win here, he gets a win over a current top 15 welterweight. And I know this sounds crazy, and it is crazy a little bit. It's unrealistic a bit. But the UFC did it with Hamzat Chimaev. It ultimately didn't come to fruition because just bad luck. But they booked Hamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards when Hamzat Chimaev was unranked. Leon Edwards was ranked like number 3. They booked that fight 3 times over. Jack Della Maddalena is a prospect that the UFC wants to push. Colby Covington, again, say what you will about his personality. Say what you will about his wins and his resume. Colby Covington, guess what? The UFC called him up on a couple days' notice. He was willing to step in for Kamaru Usman against Leon Edwards. So he showed up and made weight. So if Colby Covington, if the UFC is willing to pay him the right amount of money, maybe, just maybe he'll take the fight. I don't know. He was in witness protection for the year before that. But it's possible. I would love to see that matchup. Imagine that. UFC 293 doesn't have any big fights yet. UFC 293, the UFC signed a massive deal with Australia. Imagine a fight on UFC 293, a co-main event, Jack Della Maddalena versus Colby Covington. Sign me up for that. Again, unrealistic. And just really all these matchups in the division of fighters who currently don't have a fight. Kamaru Usman. You think he's getting Kamaru Usman? Kamaru Usman, I think he's going to take some time off, let the division flush out a bit. He fought in March, which is crazy. March was, almost 4 months ago at this point. He's not getting Kamaru Usman. Former champion, coming off of 2 losses against Leon Edwards. I just don't think that's the direction the UFC would ever go. Again, I don't think it'll happen with Colby either. I was just kind of fantasizing about that. Same thing with the Bilal Muhammad fight. I would absolutely love that matchup as well. But again, none of that is a remedy for UFC 290. So it's just super unfortunate. No matter what happens, we're not going to be appeased unless we get a massive fight and a massive step up in competition for Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 293 in September. I think I might have said August a couple times because everyone else is booked. So my official prediction for what ends up happening with this entire scenario, it's either going to be Jack Della Maddalena versus an unranked contender. Maybe Joaquin Buckley gets a bigger paycheck and he takes the fight on a week's notice. Or it'll be Jack Della Maddalena versus Neil Magny. If that does not happen, Jack Della Maddalena will not fight until UFC 293, which will be in September in Australia. And that's the card that supposedly Israel Adesanya will be headlining. So it's just unfortunate. This was a fight that I was really looking forward to. It was a fight that I was dying to see. And now it may never happen. It may be one of those fights where their career trajectories, it's just a fork in the road, and Sean Brady and Jack Della Maddalena never ended up fighting. And I wanted to see Jack Della Maddalena's grappling and takedown defense tested against Sean Brady. So this is heartbreaking news. I mean, it's heartbreaking news. I'm up at 3 a.m. doing a video on it. I was just about to go to bed. I saw the news. I said, you know what? I'll be first. I'll make a reaction video to this. I'm just super disappointed, and I can't think of another opponent unless maybe they get RDA or Luque to pull out. They're supposed to fight, I believe, in August, so maybe they're in shape and maybe they could take the fight. But even then, you run the risk of spoiling Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, if he takes on RDA on short notice, that's a different stylistic matchup than someone like Sean Brady. So then you kind of ruin a contender in Jack Della Maddalena if he does, in fact, somehow end up losing. And it's just not worth it all the way around. So it's a really crappy situation. I'm super disappointed. I don't know what the UFC should do. I gave you all the possible options that I could think of. But ultimately, what's going to end up happening, it's impossible to know. We still don't even know why Sean Brady is out. But let me know who you would like to see Jack Della Maddalena fight. Which circumstances would you like to see happen? Would you like this guy on short notice? Would you like him to get moved to UFC 293? What would you like to see? I'm genuinely curious. Is there something I haven't thought of yet? There could be something. It's 3 a.m. I got a headache. Maybe there's something I haven't thought of. Is there another replacement that is just slipping my mind right now? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.